Ladder is one of the most familiar stories in the Torah and also one of the most elusive. Jacob is alone when his dream arrives. He's not on a pilgrimage. He's not in a holy city. He's running, fleeing from the anger of his brother and fleeing from the consequences of his own choices, unsure of where he's going or what will become of him. Night falls, he lies down on bare ground and places a stone beneath his head. There's no sanctuary, no altar, no prayer book, and it is there in that exposed and unguarded place that this vision breaks open. He dreams of a ladder planted on the earth, its top reaching the heavens. Angels ascend and descend in constant motion, and above it all God stands, speaking promise into uncertainty, land, presence, protection, future. And Jacob wakes in awe and says, "Surely God was in this place, and I did not know it." He takes the stone beneath his head and sets it up as a pillar. He names the place. He makes a vow. The dream does not end with the vision, it ends with the decision to build. And Midrash, rabbinic interpretation of this story, startlingly imagines this moment. In Perkei de Rabbi Eliezer, we hear the teaching that the angels were not merely climbing a ladder, they were ascending to look upon Jacob's image engraved upon the throne of God, and then descending again to look at Jacob sleeping on the earth. The angels are astonished. The exact figure of Isaac exists in heaven and on the ground. And in this reading, the ladder is not only a structure of Jacob's dream, it's the bridge between earthly life and heavenly identity. I mean, the key thing here in this kind of ascent literature is really present in a lot of, from the first few centuries BCE in the apocryphal literature all the way through rabbinic literature. Even Paul does it. Everybody who's a holy person goes to heaven. And it really is a proof of the holiness of the person. So from this perspective, it would be easy to assume that the goal of Jacob's dream is to escape, to go up to the heavenly world, to rise beyond the danger, conflict, fear, and uncertainty that he's created himself. The latter could be read as a map of spiritual flight, an escape from the situation he's put himself in. The purpose of religion in that version of the story would be to lift us out of the world. But in the Hasidic tradition, especially the teaching of the Rebbe Rashab, turns that idea completely around. The Rashab insists that the purpose of spiritual ascent is not to remain above. The soul rises to heaven to return to earth, and he frames it in absolutely simple language. The descent is not a fall, it's the purpose of the ascent. And in that framework, the danger is not that we fail to touch heaven. The greater risk is we touch heaven and don't come back. Spiritual life is not meant to remove us from the world. It's intended to train us to re-enter it in a different way. Illumination that does not lead to obligation is incomplete. So seen through this lens, Jacob's greatness is not that his image is engraved on the throne of glory. His greatness lies in waking up. He rises from the ground, he takes the stone beneath his head, he turns it into an altar, he does something. He does not remain suspended in this mystical experience. He converts revelation into responsibility. The dream does not culminate in ecstasy, it culminates in an obligation. And the Torah is really precise here. Jacob does not attempt to re-enter the dream. He doesn't ask for another ladder. Instead, he does something absolutely simple and also physical in this world. As I said, he lifts the stone, sets it upright, marks a place in the world, and in effect says something has to be built here. And this is the Torah's insistence. Spiritual experience is never an endpoint. It is always a beginning. And this movement from heaven to ground is what makes Jacob's ladder endure. The ladder is not a mechanism of escape. It's a structure of return. And here, the teaching of Rabbi Isaac Luria even deepens the meaning of Jacob's response. Luria teaches that there's this primordial disaster, that when God creates the world, he does so via light, but the vessels that God uses, the intermediary so that God uses in this creation, are not able to hold the strength of God's life, and they shatter. And the pieces of those vessels fall to the ground as sparks, not as light. I should note, this is Luria's explanation of why this world is so messed up, right? That there was this primordial disaster. But then it becomes our job to lift up these sparks. And he calls this process tikkun. This is where Reform Judaism gets the phrase tikkun olam. It changes it into communal responsibility, but quite literally in the spiritual sense, the divine world is broken, thereby this world is broken, and we have the power to fix it through our action here on earth. I wanted to just say that rather than go for my words. That's a really important piece, and it could be a little bit complex. Believe me, Luria's version of it is really complex. I don't understand it, but all right. So Jacob seems to understand this intuitively. He doesn't walk away inspired and unchanged. He does something. He says, if God will be with me, then this stone shall be a house of God. In Lurianic language, Jacob has taken a fallen fragment of the world, this roadside stone, and beginning its repair. He's turning the encounter with the divine world into construction, his vision into structure. And the latter has done its work not when it lifted him upward, but when it sent him forward with something to build. And this is the whole spiritual arc of the story. First, the dream lifts Jacob beyond the fear that he's feeling, that his brother is going to kill him. Then the Rashab teaches that the ascent only matters if it leads back to the world. And finally, Luria insists that the return must take the form of tikkun, of actual repair of the world. Not only insight, not only emotion, not only mystical experience, but responsibility on this earth. And this is what distinguishes Jewish spirituality from mysticism alone. I talk a lot about mysticism, but it's all directed here when I do this. That's the goal. The goal is not transcendence for its own sake. The goal is transformation that lands in the real world. The latter does not exist so that we may remain suspended between heaven and earth. It exists so that having touched heaven, we return to the world and repair it. And this is where tikkun olam, as I said, that's where we get this phrase, moves from theology into our hands. Repair is not only a mystical promise, as I suggested in my iyun, it is food on a shelf. It's a family that eats dinner without fear. It's dignity preserved in the most ordinary way that ultimately is also the most spiritual way. If ascent releases sparks and return demands repair, then this is one of the places where repair means to happen, our own community. And the food pantry at JFS is not an abstraction. It's one of those places where vessels are cracked that require repair, and it's one of the places where Jacob's ladder is still standing in our time, not as a dream, but as a responsibility. We may not see angels ascending and descending, but we do see parents choosing between groceries and rent. And we see seniors skipping meals to make medication last, and see children whose most reliable nutrition comes from what a pantry can provide. Feeding people is not just tzedakah. In the language of Isaac Luria, it's a spark returned to its source. It's a fractured fragment made a little more whole. And in the language of Jacob, it's another stone lifted from the roadside and turned into a dwelling place for the presence of God. So tonight, this is our ladder. We have spoken prayers that have risen, and we felt emotions that lift. And now the final rung is placed before us, not another ascent, but a return into the world with something in our hands that can feed, sustain, and dignify another human being. Ken Vihi Ratzon, may it be God's will. Let's turn to